this Sunday morning, which is the 10th of October of the Gregorian year 2021, while I was attending a church service precisely and correctly at St. Paul's Cathedral in Calcutta, in the city of Calcutta, I observed with quite eagerness how the youths or the young members of the church contributed in order to make the service vivid and indeed enjoyable, at least for me. This reminded me quite frankly of the need to trust our young generation, the generation of our current world, who are often very young, yet well motivated, full of energy, full of enthusiastic thoughts. And I believe they can make a change for the better future of our world, indeed for all of us, if we encourage, support, but above all, enable them to bring those changes to pass. Time and time again in the recent past and also a while ago in the past, I reiterated, indeed recalled and reiterated the name of a young Swedish activist known as Miss Greta Thunberg, who has been campaigning against the various types of pollutant substances being exhausted into the atmosphere and detrimenting our world, even deteriorating the current situation dramatically. While I watched the youth singing quite cheerfully, vividly, with movement and true life in their spirit, if I may use the expression in inverted commas or in speech marks, it reminded me, of course, of my own young age, even though to my regret I was most probably not as talented as the youths are today. I believe, if I'm not wrong, in a case based upon the law of torts, a certain distinguished judge known as Baron Alderson remarked that as the world gets older, it gets wiser. I do not really know how far of that judicial, I should say, that part of judgment, or perhaps as it is also called ratio decidendi, or perhaps more correctly ratio decidendi in Latin, although my knowledge of Latin is exceedingly poor. I do not really know how far that is true in our current world. But I believe that youths are able to make a change which we often failed in our own lives. As I said a while ago, on another live telecasting of mine, I'm no longer a young man in that sense, although by grace of the Almighty, I'm still quite active and fit, despite my 59 years of age, and I admit it with all due sincerity, perhaps even honesty. But I do believe and remain convinced that young people can make a great change in our world if they are properly guided, encouraged, and motivated. But such guidance has to be proper, as I use the expression. And despite the fact that English is not my native tongue, I believe I am able to comprehend the word proper in its proper sense. Youths can be corrupted too very easily if they're misled. Young age is a time when individuals can be very easily tempted to do certain things which are detrimental to them and are likely to deteriorate the situation for them as well as for others. But if they're properly guided, they can do a lot of good things for our world. I myself left my parental home for Europe when I was only 17 years and 18 days old. Precisely, I left my parental home on the 18th of May of the Gregorian year 1979 and reached Frankfurt in Germany and later Singen-Hohentville on the 19th of May of the same Gregorian year 1979. Staying away from my parents and other relatives, temptations came into my life time and time again. But thanks to many of my former teachers and guides, I was able to overcome such temptations. And maybe thanks to God's goodness and the kind efforts shown by my teachers of various types, or I should say various kinds and types, I was able to learn a little, which I'm able to share with others today. The youth campaign against the disastrous situations caused by climatic changes during the last few years and decades ought not to be disregarded by any of us. These facts are absolutely indisputable and indeed well-founded upon sound grounds. Climatic changes are taking place dramatically. I am quite aware of the fact how within the last few years the weather appears to be very different than it used to be when I was a little boy, a teenager, or even a young youth. The catastrophic situations taking place in various parts of the world are no surprise to me. I said at least on 2 occasions in the past that a very simple-minded, not well-educated chauffeur of ours was able to predict the world, or I should say the changes of the world, some 5 decades ago when I was a little boy. The changes demanded by the youths are well justified indeed fair and just in my personal view. Many of us, including my own self, have most probably completed a large span of our lifetime on this earth. Being a man of 59, I do not know whether I shall live another couple of decades or not. The youths have their future ahead of them. And it is time for all of us to consider the need to help them achieving their goals. At this stage, I admit with all due regrets, sadness, and utter disappointment that media of various types, including the internet, ought to be brought under control in protection of the youths. Freedom of speech is definitely a great thing, if I may use again the expression in inverted commas or in speech marks. But such freedom ought not to be abused. It is not difficult for most of us who can afford a computer and access it to the internet, whether this be a PC or a laptop or even a tablet or a mobile phone, to access to various corrupted programs and sites which clearly reveal how many others are abused, including babies, children, youths, women, and in certain cases, men. Such programs or such media transmissions may be very tempting, but they are also likely to corrupt the youths. And returning to my earlier expression that youths ought to be properly guided, we need to ensure that such media, including the internet, are curtailed to a considerable extent in not encouraging young people to fall into the wrong trap. As I said, freedom of speech ought to be a fundamental right in most, if not in all countries of the world. If I'm not wrong, it is a constitutionally fundamental right in my own country. But again, such freedom ought not to be abused, nor should we sit back and allow such freedom to be abused by scrupulous businessmen, if I may use the expression, who want to make money at the cost of others, even the innocent youths. Those greedy men and women, those greedy businessmen and women, those scrupulous individuals and groups are like the expression that is mentioned in the New Testament about the devil who moves around like a lion to devour the prey. We must protect our youths against such corruption. If I'm not wrong, this coming Saturday will be the International Day of Food, when many and various parts of the world are affected by serious famines, and endangered and imperiled by approaching famines, which are almost inevitable unless we act desperately and immediately and effectively. But only some 48 hours later from that moment, it is supposed to be also the International Anti-Slavery Day. We need to prepare ourselves for that day, to take a new pledge to ensure that children, including babies, youths, women, and weak men, are no longer subjected to slavery of any type anywhere in the world. We must protect the babies, the children, the youths, the women, and the feeble men of our world. Unless we do so, we have failed in discharging our duties as human beings and practically deny our human births, at least de facto, if not de jure. Wishing you the protection of the same Creator who created all of us, even the youths of our world, growing up from tiny babies to young children, youths, and later men and women. And you, my most respected viewers, indeed, if I may address you as my beloved friends, and me, your most humble servant. Let us take the pledge even now at this very moment, that we shall not allow our youths to be corrupted by greedy, scrupulous individuals, groups, or communities. I thank you in anticipation and wishing you God's blessings and protection for your work in service of our fellow global citizens, the youths of today, the men and women of tomorrow, the very future of our world during the next days, weeks, months, years, and decades. Thank you once again for watching this video, while I bid you a pleasant afternoon from my country, and goodbye in its proper sense.